Welcome to Dhamma on the Sidewalk, insights, interviews, and practical tips on the teachings of the Buddha for people of all walks of life, attuning, exploring, integrating the teachings in everyday life. Simple Dhamma for daily life. I'm Asoka, hosting Dhamma Capsule for people like you.
Yeah, I was asking you about the play, the Shakespeare. I mean, have you read the play, any plays by Shakespeare? Take any play, for example, the Winter's Tale. It is taken as one of the mature works by Shakespeare, where a king commits a mistake because he becomes hot-tempered, quick-tempered, becomes jealous in no time. Then he loses everything. He loses friends. He loses all his wife. He loses his son.
He gets addicted to power.
Yeah, and then the oracle comes and tells him that he should suffer for 16 years, and because without suffering he will not be happy. And along with him, there are characters who know that the king is getting quick-tempered. There are characters who can control emotion, and they keep on reminding the king that you look like possessed by some kind of disastrous emotions, but the king doesn't realize it. Whereas there are characters who know that why people commit mistakes, and they know that thoughts are like angry horses sometimes. What you need to do is slow down so that you can jump over it and control it. There are characters around. So, but the king doesn't listen to them. Then the king starts realizing his mistakes, and it takes 16 years to come out of the kind of confession. It has a Christian, the social setting. He comes out of the guilt, and it is that very moment his old good friends also arrive, return back to his life, and his wife, whom he thought as a dead, turns out to be alive. Then the Winter's Tale. Then I suddenly realized that this play is telling exactly the story of the same, let's say, cave, that also the mainstream Buddhist philosophy talks about, that how difficult it is for one to hold on emotions and ideas, and how unpredictable is our own mind if we don't train it. What happens when we are deluded? When we are deluded, we take what is trivial, what is not that significant, we regard that as a very, very significant, and which is very, very significant, we don't value that at all. So that's the kind of the nature that we all carry, because when we are under the spell of cloud, when we are under the spell of strong desires, Sigmund Freud calls it strong desires.
In Buddhism, it's just called clinging and
Exactly.
attachment, and it's all formation.
Formation, right? Exactly.
It's construction. You construct.
Yeah. I look at that play, Winter's Tale, as from the political power and the spiritual power. So normally it is said that it is political power that rules over, but in fact, it finds it very difficult to rule over if it doesn't have the spiritual power going simultaneously along with it. So, political power, like without spiritual power, can't claim to have the longevity to rule over society. Have you come across an Indian scholar called Ananda Kumaraswamy?
Not that I can recall, just like that. The name rings a bell, but
he is the Sri Lankan born scholar.
The thing is, in modern times, it's always been political life and spirituality have always been separated. Separation of state and church. That's the foundation of some of the modern societies. So then it's up to you eventually to have your morality. However, there is a dominant trend which is in modern times in the Western world is usually Christianism. I think it's changing, but the separation of both have maybe been a curse more than a good point. I don't know, because what I see elsewhere is that there is influence of other spiritual trends. Dominant religion can become autocratic because of that. We know there are lots of examples of where religion becomes more important than the actual political running of the affairs.
So this is one your point. Like looks at the history of the rise of modern nation state and the other side of the other face of the modern society.
Even Gandhi was part of that.
Exactly, that's what I would like look at. See, when we look at the life story of the great leaders like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, or Martin Luther King, if you look at life history, the struggle they do, it's almost spiritual. You get a point? Because it's almost spiritual, and every nation has the leaders sacrificing and holding certain kind of the seeds, as he is saying, certain seeds of society, right? In many cases, reading the political history of a nation is, especially from the biography of the political leaders, we come to find the role that spirituality plays in their life and the way they experience it. Secularism has its own dynamics. It has on its dynamics, and like free competition has also dynamics. But then we can't deny is that even in our time, every corporate houses, the GM or the corporate monk, whoever, they too have one or the other guru side next to the next.
That also has become a trend.
That has become a
new.
trend.
It's new. It wasn't like that earlier.
It was not like it
at
was
least
not,
in the modern world, no.
No.
It was all based on the idea of democracy, like from the Greek.
How far is Greek from Venice?
Not very far. From Venice, it's like from here to Chennai, I would say.
Oh yes.
But you're asking Venice. I mean, the Venetians have built up trade with all of Asia.
Yeah.
Over the years, they started from the small islands. They were always turned. That's why it's called the Gate of the Orient, Gate of Asia. They established trade routes with the Greeks, with Turkey, with all the way to India. I mean, they've been turned towards Mesopotamia, from the early days, they're not really turned towards Italy. They're more turned towards the east.
I remember you asking me the connection between Tibet, Kathmandu to Europe. I remember that. It's a newly published book by William Dampier. The scholars, possibility of the scholars visiting from Lumini or
Oh yes,
this area to
Tibet, Tibet,
from
Kathmandu.
Tibet, Kathmandu to then could be like going to Greek. That's we with
Well, the Tibetan, some of the Tibetan kings,
yeah.
They had these feuds, small state. There were lots of different feuds in Tibet, and I can't remember exactly the name of that king. One day he said, "All right, what is the spiritual life in other places?"
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
he asked some.
This is the book I was talking about. I haven't bought it, but this is the book.
Oh, the Golden Road.
The Golden Road. This book talks about the journey people would make and how the ideas and goods from Greek and Rome
From they traveled.
India.
But there was a particular monk, a particular king who really asked, I want many people from all the monastics from these religions to come here. So he had like a Catholic monk, he had like a Muslim, he said he wants you to go and explain their religion to him, so that he wants to say, I want to know how other places, what kind of spirituality they live by. They did that. But then another king came in the 13th century, and that's the one who established Buddhism as a religion. But before that, there wasn't. And because many people traveled, it's not just Marco Polo, but it's many others. They traveled by road, and they asked for staying. Yeah, you can stay here, but can I practice my own religion? Yeah, you can practice, but a little bit away. Not on my land. You can have this little outside of my zone of influence. You can have your own thing. And then they started to wonder. So, well, actually, maybe other people have other practices. Maybe we can learn from that. So they invited. And then Tristan Getson, the one that was often mentioned by the Dalai Lama, he said, okay, then we establish Buddhism as a religion now for Tibet. But before that, it was plenty of other practices. I don't know. I can have a look at that. Yeah.
This is
the Golden Road.
I think like Oxford and Cambridge were also discussing this book, and they were recommending because they say that it opens up several kind of historical, experiences that people in real time did go through.
Yeah, I read about that in another book. I read that in this book by it's called Himalaya. It's a whole history it's an anthology of the peoples. Yeah, this one. This is really a nice book.
Okay.
A human history of the Himalaya. That's where I read about that.
Edie Douglas. Okay, Mountain Douglas.
He's an historian, anthropologist. It's a really fascinating book. It starts from the Denisovans. He starts basically by mentioning the Tibetan DNA, which has been proven to be different from the DNA of other people in the region. That's why they can survive harsh conditions and things like that. And it studied from that all the way to today's.
Okay.
And that he passes through, and also Nepal is very central in that history. The roads to Kathmandu somehow in the history were more accessible than Tibet. You have to come here before you get to Tibet.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I got it. Well, in let's talk about that play. I I look at how the order of mind and society. If you have a good order in your mind, like if the king has the good like order, the mind in good order, he can also maintain order in society. And someone who is not good, who doesn't have order in mind, is the person who doesn't know who is friend and who is enemy. Someone who doesn't have order in mind is the person who doesn't know who is loyal to him and who is not loyal. People who have clarity in their mind, someone who have order in their mind, the sense of order in their mind, they know that, but they know that the person, the fellow is committing mistake. They may suggest and they may not be heard, alright. In long term, it is the people who have the order, sense of order in their mind who prevail. And they are the one, even they are not in power, they have the responsibility, and they remain abided by certain responsibility. So whoever comes in power, that doesn't matter, but who is carrying the order in mind, and who there are people who have the sense of responsibility of
the sense of integrity,
and their numbers, though may be few, but they exist in society. And this force, the military force, the political force, don't want to give them these people as much power as they have, but at the end of the day, without the help of these people who have the clear state of mind, they too can't prolong their power. They too can't, move further. So, if evil is dynamic, definitely evil is dynamic. Shakespeare is trying to say that evil is dynamic. Definitely, evil is dynamic. We have to accept it, but we can't deny that vices don't have any force. Virtues don't have any force. Evil is dynamic. We understand it everywhere. We see society,
vices.
Yeah, vices. Yeah, but then we can't deny that virtues don't have any day. The virtues also have their day, and when vices are like dynamic and they face like kind of a crisis, because from the end point they can't move further. So at that moment, it's again the virtues, the state of mind, the clarity, the mind with the sense of integrity, that is going to play the role. So in a sense, discussing Buddhism along with Shakespeare's plays for me is a kind of, it's a very comfortable, comfortable in the sense that if I only teach the raw Buddhist philosophy, my students may find it like as if they are in the monastery or somewhere, in a kind of religious workshops or seminars. But if I bring like Shakespeare's plays in the classroom, and when I try, no matter how hard it is to bring them together in one place, the play sustains the interpretation. Did you get the point? Because other people's plays, I don't know, I haven't read all the plays, but Shakespeare has that kind of quality in him, that storytelling power that he has got. So, like, interpreting his plays is still like, okay, it sustains the weight. It sustains the weight, and you can like rely on it, and still you can say the complex thing with it, with the help of it. This is the kind of realization I have gone through with Shakespeare.
And you can also see how the human emotions take a stage in Shakespeare. Well, the jealousy, the competition, even the feeling of attachment to certain, not just to the position, but from attachment even to what they have, to what their own strong beliefs. The Buddha said, from just not the Buddha said, but from the Buddhist perspective, there are 3 root poisons, 3 roots in all human societies, in all human conditions, in all humans. There are 3 roots somehow. Even if you are born pure, there's a root of greed, root of ill will, and root of delusion. And then if you add also the root of attachment, the root of jealousy, all of that, somehow when you say, no matter how, people can be good, but at some point they get high on they don't want to listen. They lose some sort of integrity.
Yeah.
Because it's greed. What is today's world running by? It's running by greed. Always have a little more. And when it is power, and it's at the cost of lives, at the cost of, I wonder as well, why humans, when you have a little more and your condition starts to change and improve, we are attached to that cycle of replicating mistakes, getting lost in perceptions.
Exactly. Like the other
It's
place.
easy. Basically, it's easy to lose integrity. It's very easy to lose integrity.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you think about this, one of the first precepts in Buddhism, the precept for conducting a life, the first one is non-violence. Or you can say not killing any human being, not taking the life of any human being. And just imagine if the whole world was run just by one precept. Everything you do, you can stage war if you want, but it doesn't have to kill anyone. Is that possible?
No.
No. Unfortunately, no. And then the second one is not taking what is not given. But not lying. Just imagine not lying. Always say something. Yeah, that's how, the honest is the beyond honesty.
Yeah, yeah.
It's being saying things as they are and not as you wish them to be. And that is fundamentals. 3 things. Not taking what is not given, not lying, not killing. Just look at that. 3. How much damage can also already be not undone? I mean, prevented actually. Just 3. I'm not even saying about alcohol or, other things. Just non-harming behavior. It just holds on to just a very few number. You don't need to think about not eating at the night, not doing this, not watching movie, and not taking drugs, not taking this. Not just remove even that. Just look at the first 3. Not taking what is not given, not lying, not killing. Whew. You can reshape the world with that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's very difficult to accept the fact that we are prone to commit mistakes. We are prone to commit mistakes. Yeah, we are prone to commit errors because
we are prone to let go of the entrainment of the mind towards keeping higher virtues.
Yeah. Okay.
We are prone to that.
Yeah. It is here, like I discussed Shakespeare's Hamlet. Hamlet is like a poet. He is an enlightened person. He even tells that what kinds of ideas are coursing through his mind. And why should he not be thinking too much? Because thinking much is very bad. What I need is a peace of mind. That's what keeps on saying. And his famous dialogue, if you look at the soliloquy that he utters, it's called "To be or not to be." That's the question. The famous soliloquy that he tells it. He realizes that kind of the tension that one has to go through, the conflict that they're bound to experience in their life. So it looks like as if he is an enlightened person, alright? By listening to his speech, it looks like He's an enlightened person because he knows what's going in the other people's mind, because he has that kind of sharpness he has acquired through his personal life experience.
Yeah.
But then he too can't deny that, like, free from the kind of mistakes. He happens to commit mistake, then he can't detach himself, especially when the issue of his father's death comes. He thinks that his uncle is the culprit, so he can't detach himself from the suffering, the revenge. Then he takes part in and kills. Instead of killing one, he kills the other. See, now his mind is already clouded. Because what I'm trying to communicate with Hamlet is that even an enlightened person, poet-like mind, someone who is aware of his or own emotions and the ideas flowing in his or her mind, even a person like Hamlet is prone to commit error, because detachment is something like, for some moment we may detach, but then a time comes when it's very difficult for one to not remain without attaching to some particular, because Shakespeare is trying to show that probably tragedy is what we are bound to experience.
The wording might be different in Shakespeare than obviously in the Buddhist tales, because there are lots of tales. There are also tales like the Jataka tales from the Buddha's previous lives, right? When he's telling how he was in previous life. The wording might be different, but somehow human condition is a tragedy.
Yeah.
It's just another word for samsara.
Samsara, exactly.
Human, and he can't be perfect. No. Well, even his level of enlightenment or awakening is not yet fully entrained and deeply rooted, because there are still propensities that are carried from other, and it's called the habitual tendencies that you have. They are carried on from other lives, and some of them are deeply rooted in the behavior. And sometimes there's a cloud. You spoke about clouding before. There's a cloud that you haven't reached the point of investigating the mind and seeing for yourself where is your weak point. It takes entrainment. It takes really constant entrainment, and some people also have the free will, I would say, to the freedom to just not do it. It's not compulsory to actually go and try to be better. Some people are very happily not going to do better. They are very happy to be bad person.
Okay, so I'm interested to know, like, did Buddha really wanted to institutionalize his teaching? Like, no, right?
No, the Buddha didn't want to teach. So there are many different ways to tell how this happened, but when that happened in Bodh Gaya. So he come out of his meditation and, I would say, self-absorption, and he just wanders back. And before he entered his absorption time, he had he had 5 fellows with him. They were practicing all sorts of practices, sadhus basically, right? And then he left, and after some, he said, okay, this time is gone for me. I have realized liberation, and he accepted to eat something from Sujata.
Okay.
And then he wondered, and then his friends say, "Oh, you break the precept. You're eating. You left." He said, "No, I found the liberation. I found it." And then they say, they start laughing at him. So they ask him question, and he said, this is how it works. And then there are devas, entities, who ask him and said, okay, so we want to know how this works. No, he said, I can't teach this to people because people are going to think it's breaking the convention so much about, the environment was Brahmanism, the environment was about, there's all sorts of contextual things in his time. And no, people will not understand. People will think I'm crazy. I cannot teach. And they said, there are people with dust in their eyes. And if you can help us remove the dust in their eyes so that they can lead a better life, please give us a teaching. And he started to teach the Dhammacakkappavattana, which is the first turning of the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically the Four Noble Truths.
Four Noble.
The Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path. He continued teaching, and then at the time of his passing, also Ananda, who was his closest disciple, asked, "You're about to pass away. What's going to happen? No teacher anymore?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, don't rely on the teacher. Rely on the Dhamma. Rely on the teachings. Don't rely on me. I was just here to spread the message. Now I'm going. So he didn't want, but he said, out of compassion, I'm going to teach. So this is why, up until today, there is no proselytism in Buddhism.
No.
You won't have anyone coming to AA.
Every year. To get the members.
It's a lot. It's also in the Tibetan Buddhism different forms, but in the Theravada, so the orange saffron robes, before there is a talk on Buddha Dhamma talk, you have to request it. So there's a chant.
Okay.
You ask for the Dhamma because he didn't want. So it's people don't know this. He said people are going to think I'm crazy. And you know what? The story is these fellows who said to him, "Oh, what?" He said, "Do you want to know? This is what I found." And they became his first disciples. They worked all together. He became and amongst them was Ananda.
Okay.
No, he didn't want to teach. He said, "People are going to think I'm nuts."
So, this makes my claim, like my effort to bring in Shakespeare and Buddhist teachings in one place, and it justifies I think it justifies, because if life is something that one has to discover, alright, and no one comes to rescue you, it's up to you to,
Well,
take
no,
care.
but yeah.
Because you have to take the solace, they call it solace, right, under your own thoughts, right? So that developing sense of compassion to your own thoughts, and then living with such a wonderful life, no one can give, but we have to inculcate on our own.
It's all up to you.
It's up to you. So this is what the Shakespeare's, the famous characters live through. They, like Macbeth, the Lady Macbeth and the King Macbeth, they had the conspiracy together, planned together, but they suffer separately. They realize that the guilt that they have to carry and the madness that they have to carry, and they suffer on their own. So it like one person's idea looks like as if a mosquito. Already the other point. The other person's idea also looks like a mosquito, and together they had eggs. You get that point?
I like that, Anna.
Yeah, they had eggs, and then suddenly they realized that it's a dungeon and they've been spreading disease, they try to become butterfly, but they can't. This means to say that, like the king suffers in his own chamber, the queen suffers on her own chamber, and the suffering is something like individual, and is conditioned by the action that each of them has taken, is a result of the action that each of them has taken. That's why they come together to inspire each other, to instigate each other for a time moment being, like the flowers do during the pollination, alright? Or the animals do during, yeah.
Yeah, and also, you know, if you take it really from the Buddhist perspective, this life is just but it's easy to say it's just but a dream. It's real. It's for real. We are here. But it's just part of a cosmic movement where we have come back and we have had interactions. So I understood this very deeply when a monk told me that, my daughter, maybe in another life, we had another relationship. That's why the bond was very strong. And interestingly, my daughter was also asking me whether we had met in another life before. Because when she disagree with me, she thinks that, maybe in another life she was the mother and I was not the mother. But having said that, the Buddha only said a few things important. He said, I'm here to teach about suffering, but suffering, dukkha, is about imbalances in your own life. So everyone has a different imbalance. Some people have imbalances in certain aspects, some others in other aspects. And then the end of it. But in this life, if you really want to solve all the end of the card, that is not the wheel of the card, instead of being round, it's a bit square. You have to really train and entrain your mind so much that for some people it's just not possible, because in this life they haven't had the intention to do that. They only had the intention to touch base with a number of things. So you get a chance in another life, because this life is not the only one, if you get it from this perspective. Now, even in Buddhism, there are some planets some schools where it's possible in this life. And that's why the training is very, very stringent on the mind. It's always on the mind. So that's why I was saying earlier, you got the freedom. Some people, they are really not interested in bettering their life. They can't see that it's possible, that it comes from their mind.
Yeah.
It is possible to end difficulties.
I'm particularly interested, also linking this Buddhism and Shakespeare's plays, along with the vision the classical Greek philosophers had, especially the vision that they promoted. I'm quite influenced by the one. They say that the best thing in this world would have been not to have been born, because the very fact that we are born, we are bound to carry all this, these things. So the very moment you are enlightened, if one is enlightened, lives with the flood, the light that comes in, and if that moment the person thinks that I'm enlightened, and then the solution, the best thing for him is to die, because returning back to the normal, the samsara again, is to face the dialectics
Again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But from the Buddhist perspective, if you have done your homework in this life, you come back and should have less.
Yeah.
In that. In another perspective, if you join what is called the early Buddhism, or the actual what is called also the small vehicle or the southern vehicle, the Theravada vehicle. Everything is possible in this life. So the orange robes, the entrainment of the mind in understanding is so stringent because they don't want to come back. So that's the arahant. They don't want to come back. So you have to achieve all of that right now.
I understand it.
And that's the thing. Shiva, see you next time.
Yeah, see you.